Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the first roundtable, Energy Professionals Roundtable of 2021. We are truly excited to be here this morning because of many things. 2021 is a year of optimism. It's a year of turnaround. It's a year of all the re-energizing, refocusing, re-strategizing, restoring, and every other you can imagine. And what a way to start the year, but by talking about how we are going to refocus and repurpose our thoughts and our actions around climate change action. This is it. You are in the right place at the right time with the right people, doing the right thing, listening to the right information, and with the right kind of resources in place. And that is my promise this morning as we are gathered here, that we are talking about what matters to us, not just at a personal level and at a professional level, but at a global level, because climate change is a global conversation. And I am you, and you are me, and we are us. And if we don't take personal responsibility for climate change action, then what happens next? There's somebody on the chat saying they can't hear me. Can you hear me? The way I have said so many lovely things.
We can hear you.
Can you hear me? Am I loud and clear? Do I need to
Yes.
pump up the volume? I'm okay? All right. Whoever can't hear me, please crank up your volume. We are talking about great things this morning. And we have put ourselves in this space at this time. We could be doing so many other things, but we have decided to come together and just talk about energy, talk about climate change, talk about what's important to us. And so we have some housekeeping rules. We kindly request that we mute ourselves and unmute when called upon to speak so that we run an orderly meeting. For those who are able to have their cameras on, it would be so nice to see you. You know, we made it to 2021. It's good to see each other. Many people didn't make it to this space. So if we can see you, we'll be happy to see you. Sometimes it's a bit unnerving to talk to black camera boxes. So if honor us with the presence of your smile, the presence of your face, we'll be very happy about that. Check on the background noise movement as well so that we can speak in one voice. When we have a question to ask, we can request that you put it in the chat. If you have a comment, you can put it in the chat as well. Or you can raise your hand, use the raise hand icon, and any of the moderators will come to you and ask you to unmute and share your question. So that's our general housekeeping rules, and just to maintain good meeting etiquette. So why are we here and what are we talking about? Let me share my screen because we have many exciting things to talk about this morning. So we have our first energy roundtable. We have a great speaker. He's already in the house, raring to go. He's very passionate about this subject, and we shall be introducing him later. And this is part of what we are calling in the run-up to the World Energy Day Conference 2021. World Energy Day happens on 22nd of October. That's the actual World Energy Day. But for us, we celebrate it all year. One day is not enough. How can you celebrate energy in one day? It's too little. No. We celebrate it all year. And so World Energy Day 2021, we have a great theme. In our next roundtable, we'll be unpacking this theme because the theme is around energy sustainability in this continent. And you know, Africa is the most promising continent in the globe. And I have no apologies to make about that. I know we have a global audience, but Africa is the space to watch. Join us. And so this is our theme. We'll unpack it properly in the next webinar, but it's around food sustainability, very important conversation. Around climate change, we are talking about that today, and about water, and all this in the next, where these nexus with energy. And the conference itself will be in Kampala, Uganda. We'll tell you a little bit more about that as this webinar progresses. So a little history about World Energy Day. It was first commissioned in 2012 in Dubai, so it's been going on for a while, even if people don't know about it. And we are very purposeful that that was going to stop. The same way people celebrate World Environment Day on 5th of June and everybody knows about it, we all need to know about World Energy Day and do something big and meaningful. And so please spread the word. And participating demonstrates commitment, demonstrates the cause for change. And so let's be a part of that. There are many activities around World Energy Day. It culminates in a 2.5 day conference and a gala dinner. This time it's going to be in Kampala, and we have Kampala people in the house. We'll call upon them to welcome us a little later in the day, but we are so excited to be going to the Pearl of Africa. There's a Youth Innovation Challenge in there, professional awards in there. There's just so much excitement around World Energy Day, and we want to share this with you and have you a part of this movement for change. Then there are CSR activities, social media activities, webinars and roundtables like this one, talks in institutions, and you can throw in any other energetic thing in there that you would wish to do around energy, and get in touch with the Secretariat so that we can work together and work together. This was pre-COVID. Pre-COVID, you can see the number of people in this conference, great audience, great inclusion, great diversity. We really just did have a fabulous time in the pre-COVID times. And during COVID, we went online. We were so versatile. We had an online conference, online series of activities. It was so well attended. It was just, look at the smiles of the people on this screen. You'd not imagine that behind the screen, people can create excitement about energy, but it did happen. It was such a fabulous 3 days, and we absolutely loved it. We call upon you to join us in the World Energy Day activities. The youth are the future of this continent, the future of this globe. The Youth Innovation Challenge, it kicks off around July with great concepts and prototypes and proof of concepts being put together, and young people are just the way to go. It is said that in this nation of ours, for example, over 80% of the population are under 35. So I want you to look at yourself. If you're under 35, you need to clap for yourself. I know you're not personally responsible for that, but you are in a space where you are ready to take on the world and make such a difference. Those of us above 35, don't worry, don't worry. Our role here is to mentor and to handhold and to ensure that the next generation really does a better job than the generation we are in. So there's a whole challenge, and we shall be launching this again this year. So young people, please step up. There were exciting projects last year. COVID-related projects, in the energy. Oh, it was, I could go on and on, but this seminar is not about that. It's about climate change and our actions towards that, and, taking charge of change. So let me stop there before I go on and on about young people. I am extremely passionate about this subject. And so therefore, this is what our call to action is. This great author, this great passionate advocate for change says there's no energy crisis, really. There isn't. The only crisis is a crisis of ignorance. And we are here to undo this crisis. That is why we are here today. We have gathered here this morning to undo this crisis of ignorance, because if we don't know, people perish for lack of knowledge. We are undoing that. That is not us. We are energy people. We are energized. We want to close the crisis of ignorance divide. As we speak in these conferences, in these webinars, as we talk to young people, as we have talks, as we are in our corporate spaces, our personal spaces, let us turn around this crisis of ignorance. Let's educate every single person. We're in a mission to start this from kindergarten. You can imagine if that 3-year-old knows, I need to be responsible for energy change. I need to put off the lights. I need to save energy. I need to ensure things are not running when they shouldn't be running. I need to use the sun. The sun is a resource for me to use to create energy. If we can start it at this level, then the global climate change crisis would just go away. Would not have people abusing, because you become what you are. Excellence is a habit. So if the habit starts from when we are toddlers, imagine what this world would be like. So the onus is on us, the responsibility is ours. Let's take charge of change and let us just make a difference. And that's our call to action this morning as we start off and kick off this seminar with a lot of razzmatazz and a lot of gusto and a lot of energy. Did I introduce myself? Did I? Or I'm just talking and talking and talking endlessly and you're all shaking your heads. All right, let me have good meeting etiquette and introduce myself. Good morning, everybody. My name is Carol Gaduru. I am a passionate energy enthusiast. I'm an environmentalist. I love all works environment. The other day, somebody was talking about creation care. And so I think that is something else that I can call myself. I am a creation care activist. Is that a big enough word? CCC, Creation Care activist Carol Galvero. I am part of the World Energy Day Secretariat, and I would love to welcome you to this webinar. It's going to be extraordinary. And as we start this webinar, what we are talking about today is climate change. What are the emerging considerations? What do we need to do about all parts of that pyramid? There's a famous pyramid. What are we doing at all levels of this pyramid? What is Africa's space in all of this? There's a lot of excitement right now because the world has shifted with the big boys in blue, stars and sparkles and spangles coming back into this conversation has shifted the way the world is thinking about climate change action. Where are we? What do we need to do? How do we need to do it? And what exactly do we need to do? And so we have a great speaker this morning coming to talk to us about this subject. And before I introduce him, let me introduce his organization. And so we can just see what he does when he's not doing excellent talks like this. And so this is Climate and Energy Advisory. And when you take a look at this, it feels so green, the leaves feel so refreshing, and it's a citadel of resilience and sustainability. And COVID-19 has taught us about two things: resilience and sustainability. If those two words are not on your lips, then I invite you to check again, because around resilience and sustainability is what we need to weave ourselves. So they do many things. I will send you this brochure, but I just want to focus on the key areas: climate change policy, adaptation, mitigation, and financing, very important. Natural resource management, green growth and urban development, and clean energy development services. So this is what Climate and Energy Advisory does on a day-to-day when they're not hosting and running great seminars like this and being keynote speakers. And so our chief guest has a whole team behind him who are delivering on these key objectives. And we invite you on this train to greatness with them as they share what they do, how they do it, and we can partner. It is in partnership that great things happen. We have development partners with us as well on this call. Please take a look at this implementation partner that we have in Climate and Energy Advisory and see how the partnership can work. And so that is the company from which our great speaker hails. And now let me introduce him. I have a scroll. You know how in the days of old, there was a long scroll that people would read. Let me show you my scroll. I'm sure you can see. I've even highlighted it. This is my scroll. It is the excitement with which I want to introduce our speaker for the day. So Mr. Stephen Mutimba is the Managing Director of Climate and Energy Advisory, the firm I have just told you about. He is very well placed to speak to us today purely because of passion. Academics and professional qualifications follow passion because you can be very technically competent, but you do not have the passion for the work. So for him, passion comes first, and then the technical qualifications, of which he has lots, come next. He has a master's degree from University of Oxford. He has academic qualifications in economics of climate change from Cambridge University. He is very focused on the nexus between climate change, science, economics, and policy. He's an ex-KU, Kenyatta University in the house. I am one of them. Kenyatta University produces great alumni like Mr. Mutimba. His degree from the Kenyatta University is in botany, zoology. You see, he's heading somewhere with, he's not just all over the place. This is where he's going. And because he's running a successful enterprise in climate and energy advisory, he's currently doing an executive MBA from Quantic School of Business and Technology in Washington, DC. So please, my people, learning is a continuous process. It doesn't just end. Let us continue learning. He has over 25 years of experience in this area and this space. He's been working quite a bit in Sub-Saharan Africa, in both the Anglophone and Francophone areas, in policy, strategy, adaptation, mitigation, and finance, climate change, and REDD+. So that is him. He's also very passionate about putting things on paper because where policies are not in place, there is no sustainability. So in terms of the Paris Agreement, the Kyoto Protocol, and all of this paperwork, he brings them home. And so he has participated in capacity building and awareness creation and is an international consultant in nationally determined contribution financing strategy, both in Kenya and in Uganda, and he's moving along sub-Saharan. Here does my tongue betray me? Sub-Saharan Africa. Please ask me that again. Sub-Saharan Africa. And so I could go on and on. Are you seeing the excitement with which I am introducing our speaker today? It is because he brings a wealth of knowledge. If we were to consult and pay consulting fees for what it is he's about to share with us today, I admit to you our COVID-ridden pockets might not be able to manage that. And so it is our honor and pleasure that you're here today, Mr. Mutimba. Karibu sana, welcome. Talk to people about what you're most passionate about. We open the floor to you. Over to you, Stephen Mutimba.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Caroline, for that very flowery introduction. That's very generous of you. Yeah, so I just would like to thank you very much for considering me for this presentation. I didn't know that I'm the first for this year, given, as you said, this is a year of restoration, re-energization, I don't know, restructuring. You said a lot of re. So I'm very honored and I'm really flattered that I'm the first to speak on you on what you've been doing for the last a few years. I'd also like to thank my audience for just sparing time to listen to me. When Caroline told me that I'm going to be a presenter, I actually thought it was going to be tomorrow. So I'd given myself today to do a presentation for tomorrow. But yesterday when we spoke, I realized, well, it's today. And so I went ahead and put together a presentation on an area which, as Caroline says, I'm very passionate about. And I've been working in this area for the last about 20, I'll say, yeah, since I started working, because I remember when I first started, when I first joined my first job, that is in 1990 in KEFRI, in Kenya Forest Research Institute, my first duty was to represent my director at the United Nations Environment Program, that is UNEP. And what were they talking about? They were talking about climate change. That was just when the United Nations were discussing about the three big environmental agendas, which were represented by the UNFCCC, the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, the United Nations Convention on Biodiversity, and the United Nations Convention on Combating Desertification, those three. So since then, I've been a follower of those three agendas. And when I did my master's, I actually settled on climate change, which I thought was very, very, very important because it does touch on everything. So I'll be giving a presentation, and I thought that, you know, when I was given this the topic, I just thought, let me try and adapt it to our situation in Africa. And I think in Africa, one of the biggest problems that we have is that we tend to lag behind in so many things. And energy is one of those things that we are lagging behind. And I thought now to just come up with some of the ideas which I thought are innovative, or they could try to make us think how we're going to use the agenda that is there, the global agenda that is there, given that now we have a president in the US who has taken the country back to the Paris Agreement. And what does that mean? And how can Africa just take advantage of that? So I just want to put my presentation on the screen so that we can discuss through it. And yeah, so I'll be discussing, let's see, yeah. So my topic of today is emerging consideration for Africa's energy climate change agenda. And I'll be focusing on unlocking finance for energizing communities at the bottom of the pyramid or at the base of the pyramid. And you notice the term there, energizing, not electrifying. When a number of studies have been done, you find that there's always emphasis on electrification. But in Africa, what we need is a broader term, energization. And energization does encompass both electrical energy and thermal energy, because thermal energy is one area that we really are lagging behind in terms of technology. So when you look at energy supply in Africa, it doesn't really meet demand, and we have some of the lowest energy penetration. By energy penetration, I mean modern energy penetration. And climate change is expected to make matters worse, since most of the main energy sources in Africa is actually hydroelectricity, which is responsible for 94% of production in Africa. So climate change does present an opportunity to upscale investment and research, since more than half of renewable energy potential is located in Africa. More than half is located in Africa. However, we have only exploited 5% of that renewable energy potential. If you look at the statistics recently, in the last 10 years, renewable energy capacity has increased from about 28 gigawatts in 2010 to 50 in 50 in gigawatt in 2018, driven by increasing investments in wind and solar power installation. Despite this stride in energy generation, more than 50% of households in Africa rely on biomass, which is, and it's not just biomass, it's traditional biomass. So with the increase in use of technology, energy demand will rise, but it also creates an impetus for households to upgrade their sources of energy to match technological requirements. And later on, you will see how households are really important as far as energy is concerned. If we come back to Kenya, we find that the country with the highest GDP in the region, and this is in the Eastern Africa region, still has a majority of its household relying on biomass for household primary energy, even though electricity access has improved in the rural areas. A majority of the households still rely on biomass for heating and cooking, with the electricity used mostly for lighting and charging appliances. So although biomass is the major energy source in Kenyan households, renewable energies still has become the dominant source of electricity generation in the country. And if you look at the statistics, in 2019, electricity generation by source was geothermal 44%, hydropower was 33%, fossil fuel 11%, wind 10%, and other sources 2%. However, despite the large energy production from renewable energy, fossil fuel, that is oil, still accounts for over 40% of Kenya's budget. So you see, we are spending a lot of money on fossil fuel, and most of it goes into the transport sector. That's just a graph to show our energy mix, and you can see that 44% is actually coming from geothermal, and we still have 11% thermal, but that thermal is taking a lot of our budget, as well as the 33% import. The things are not different because in most of sub-Saharan Africa countries, there's high potential for renewable energy as well as fossil fuel production. However, due to poor infrastructure, struggling economies, and poor governance, most of the population still rely on biomass for their primary energy needs, while the industrial sector suffers from unreliable electricity supply. And according to several scholarly sources, several African countries are increasing investment to renewable energy sources. For instance, with more production expected from geothermal power, Kenya is one of the countries in Africa with the greatest potential for renewable energy production. But there's still very high dependence on biomass. When you look at the countries just around Eastern and Southern Africa, you can see the graph there. The dependence on biomass is very high, with a country like Burundi depending on biomass about 90%. Kenya, we're at around 68%. Malawi is over 80%, Mozambique over 80%, Rwanda over 80%. Uganda, Tanzania, the reliance on biomass is very, very high. South Africa, although different from other African countries, you can see that they rely on coal, which is also not very good for the environment. So you can see that we are still very, very far as modern energy is concerned. Our electricity and nuclear actually is non-existent, apart from in South Africa, the rest of Africa. And if we take the 7 countries that I've shown, we are still a very poor energy continent. If you look at the total final consumption by fuel and sector in sub-Saharan Africa, and you look at in terms of million metric tons of oil equivalent, you'll see that in industry, coal is used, and this is mostly in South Africa and some countries in North Africa. And then oil, all the countries use oil is used in most of the countries. You can see 69 there, 69 million metric tons in the transport sector. When it comes to gas, there is 9 million metric tons of oil equivalent. Electricity in industry, we have 17 million metric tons of oil equivalent in industry and in residential. But I want you to focus on bioenergy. You'll see that when it comes to biomass energy, in industry, we have like 18 million metric tons of oil equivalent in industry and 281 million metric tons of oil equivalent in residential. And this is where our challenges really are, is that most of Africa is actually using a lot of biomass energy, and this is mostly traditional biomass energy. So when you look at the share of total final consumption of energy, 64% of sub-Saharan Africa is using, 64% goes into residential, and out of that, a lot of it is biomass energy, biomass energy. So most of the residential or households are actually using biomass energy, which is one of the biggest problems that or challenges that we face in Africa. And so how do we now make sure that we are now using the agenda we have, the climate change agenda, to ensure that we do better? So since a large proportion of Africa's energy is from hydroelectric power, higher temperatures will lead to low reservoir levels and thus reduced working capacity of dams, leading to blackouts and unreliable electricity supply. As I said earlier, we depend on hydroelectric power. And so with high temperatures, we're going to have problems. On the other hand, whenever we have rainfall, floods, on the other hand, are expected to make it more difficult to implement hydropower projects by causing overflows, which cause flooding downstream. So if we have rain, we still have problems. If we don't have rain, we still have problems. And these are some of the causes of climate change. So climate change is important to Africa's energy because energy system we use will determine the resilience of economies and households to climate change instigated economic impacts. Fossil fuels are used in many of the African countries, but the link between their greenhouse gas emissions and climate change is increasingly becoming a basis to reduce their use. As you know, greenhouse gases are the major causes of climate change. So the agenda here is how do we reduce emissions? So climate change is very important for Africa's energy since it will affect the price of fossil fuels. And that is the fossil fuels is going to go up. As clamor for incentives on renewable energy production and higher taxation to reduce the dependence of countries on fossil fuels hits a crescendo, that means that as much as we want to use a lot of fossil fuel, then we'll have to dig deeper into our pockets in order to use fossil fuel. So African countries therefore have to look for energy alternatives that will perform the same function of power generation, heating, cooling, and transport at similar or higher efficiency and at the same or cheaper prices than fossil fuel. This might cost jobs in the countries that are highly dependent on them, but others argue that installation of renewable energies will create more jobs, job opportunities. So we come to the Paris Agreement, and there have been a lot of excitement around the Paris Agreement since the US rejoined. And so the US renewed membership in the Paris Agreement, and the country being one of the biggest contributors to both in greenhouse gas emission and also to funds that are supposed to reduce emissions, means that there will be more financing to drive sustainable economic growth by creating more jobs, providing stability and security in society, and encouraging innovation and competition in the business market. But how can this money cascade down to people at the bottom of the pyramid who still use firewood for cooking and cannot afford electricity? That's going to be the gist of my presentation or the gist of this discussion today. So when you look at the Paris Agreement, you find that the Paris Agreement came up with four main things. The first one was to keep global temperature increase well below 2 degrees, try to limit it to 1.5 degrees centigrade. The other one was to ensure that there is about $100 billion a year pledged by developed countries, which is a commitment to more in the future. By 2020, we're supposed to have 100 billion, and then there's a commitment that more should come in the future. Then the other issue was to reduce emissions, but before reducing emissions, first of all, to peak greenhouse gas emission as soon as possible, and then balance between greenhouse sources and sinks by 2050. And the fourth one was to review each country's contribution to cutting emissions and scale up every 5 years. I remember when Caroline was doing the introduction, she talked of NDCs, nationally determined contributions. Nationally determined contributions are supposed to be the way in which every country will review their emissions and also come up with ways in which we are going to reduce emissions. I've been very privileged to be part of the Kenya NDC developments, especially I was commissioned to help in the NDC in developing the NDC financing strategy, and therefore I know how much emissions we need to reduce in Kenya, and what we need to do in order to reduce those emissions, which is quite a lot of work, but we'll discuss that later. So keeping with the Paris Agreement, the Paris Agreement discusses that we should peak greenhouse gas emissions as soon as possible. And then after 2050, all anthropogenic emissions, by anthropogenic emissions, we mean human-induced emissions, should be balanced with removal by sinks. That is, we should reduce all the emissions, but sinks in this case means planting trees, making sure the greenhouse gas emissions are well bound into the soil as well as into plants. It also proposes an integrated approach to emission reduction, which includes renewable energy, forest conservation, afforestation, and reforestation. The implication of the agreement on energy is that for change in the energy sector, the world must focus on three core objectives, and that is utilize all available technologies and push forward for new research and development. And if you've been following this area, and I know most of you or all of you have been doing that, you'll see that there's quite a lot of development as far as research is concerned, looking for a new alternative to fossil fuel. There's even talk of liquid solar, which is being spearheaded by Bill Gates and other people, and quite a bit of money has been put aside. So there's also the need to increase ambition to change among all actors in all regions of the world. This is something that they're calling everyone, and that is why that this Paris Agreement, part of the reason why it's very different from others is that it included every country, even those who produce fossil fuel, they're on board and they're looking at what can we do to make sure that we have a better world. And then to mobilize funds needed to enable the change, we need to have that change. So investors across Europe, this is one of the statements that came up from this International Investor Group on Climate Change, which says that investors across Europe will now have the confidence to do much more to address the risks arising from high carbon assets and to seek opportunities linked to the low carbon transition already transforming the world's energy system and infrastructure. This was some of the excitement or statements that were made when the Paris Agreement was agreed upon. So in terms of implications of the agreement on energy, the text says that climate change is an urgent and a potentially irreversible threat to human societies and the planet. It requires the widest possible cooperation by all countries. And the implication here is that there's a need to reduce the production and consumption of polluting fossil fuels and adopting cleaner and renewable energy technology. The text also says climate change is a common concern of humankind. As parties take action to address climate change, respect, promote, and consider their respective obligations on human rights. The implication here is that there's need to promote clean and affordable energy sources, including for household cooking and lighting, especially in developing countries. And this is where most of our challenge is, because the three-stone fire is still a very, very vehicle for cooking in the whole of Africa. So how do we change this three-stone fire into something that is more cleaner? And then the text also says, address the large gap between the effect of mitigation pledges in NDCs, nationally determined contribution by 2020, and actual reductions needed to remain below 2 degrees. And that means that there's need to increase investment and deployment of renewable energy technologies for industrial transport and domestic appliances. And enhance predictable provision of finance, technology, capacity building to support developing countries for enhanced, that was pre-2020 actions, which now we are post-2020. And the implication here was how do we increase investment in more efficient and clean energy technologies? I think that's something that we continually talk about. So, the agreement generally acknowledges the need to promote universal access to sustainable energy in developing countries, in particular in Africa, through the enhanced deployment of renewable energy. And by then, you could see that Africa, this is about 10 years ago, this graph here, lowest, it still has the lowest percentage living with electricity, just 24%. When you look at other continents, they are much higher than that. So how do we, having gone through what the Paris Agreement says, what are some of the proposals for unlocking finance from this agreement? Because it has this climate finance to energize communities at the base of the pyramid. How do we unlock that financing from these instruments that are in the Paris Agreement so that people at the base of the pyramid in Africa can really benefit? So there's something called distributed energy resources and blended finance, which I want to talk about. This is an area that a lot of people, a lot of researchers and innovators are looking at. And given the enormous financial resources climate change presents through the Paris Agreement, there's need for us to come with a new approach to finance that could unlock access to energy for over about 600 million Africans who do not have modern energy. So distributed energy resources and blended finance hold the key to unlocking clean energy, electricity and thermal, to energy poor Africans at the base of the pyramid. And we are talking about potential end users living on very low income. Because when you look at people who are still using three-stone fire, part of the reason is that they have very low income. There are other reasons, but that's one of the main ones. So distributed energy companies provide access to a number of critical necessities such as lighting, access to basic appliances, increased agricultural productivity and climate resilience, etc. And when we talk about distributed energy resources, what do we mean? So a distributed energy resource is a small-scale unit of power generation that operates locally and is connected to a larger power grid at the distribution level, could be connected or not. So DERs include solar panels, small natural gas fuel generators, electric vehicles, and controllable loads, such as heating, ventilation, and air conditioning systems, and electric water heaters. An important distinction of DER is that the energy it produces is often consumed close to the source. For those of you who've been watching the events in the US, when Joe Biden, the current president, was introducing his energy advisor or energy ambassador and his team, one of the things they were very excited about was the market opportunities that exist in climate change. And these are some of the things that they were talking about. I remember the person who was nominated for to be in charge of climate change and energy docket. She said that they're going to make sure that US is producing solar panels, that they're producing electric vehicles, and that they're going to produce all these clean energy products, and they'll be looking at markets in other parts of the world. Of course, Africa is one of them. What the US wants to do is actually to compete with China, because China is ahead as far as some of these DRs are concerned. So as in Africa, we need to do the same. How do we position ourselves so that we are not just consumers of these DERs, but we are also maybe even manufacturers, and we also have that market. We are able to compete with countries like the US in producing and disseminating these products. So DERs are therefore the combination of physical and virtual resources used in the production and storage of energy at or near where to be used and separate from the main grid. And the DERs are commonly used to manage a number of smaller power generation and storage methods in residential, commercial, and industrial sectors. They may be used by utility providers, business, and individuals in the production and storage of renewable power or for backup power sources. The technologies are fundamental requirements of more advanced power grids, such as the smart grids. So the inclusion of distributed energy resources into the grid has several benefits, and this is customers with DER assets can expect to pay less for electricity because they can sell power back to the grid. And if you look back here in Kenya, the Energy Act 2019 actually provides for net metering, which if implemented, will make many households mini DER systems or mini distributing companies. That is those of you who have looked at the Energy Act, it does provide that the utility company, that is KPLC, is supposed to distribute net meters. Net meters is whereby when you install it, and let's say you've also installed solar panels on your roof, you can generate that electricity. And when you start using that electricity, and if you have excess, it can actually go back to the grid. And when it goes back to the grid, then the meter runs backward. And instead of getting a bill, you get a negative bill. So what you're doing here is that you're doing a DER system. You could also provide that same power to your neighbor. You know, this is already in our policy and in our act. It's just the implementation that is lagging. So in areas where there is high reliance on wind, solar, and other variable energy resources, DER can be used to help improve quality of service and reliability of service. You see that we have a lot of power outage in Kenya. And this power outage is simply because of the stability of the grid. If net metering was allowed and people are producing solar from their own roofs, it will really improve the stability of the grid. And what we are thinking is that the Kenya's devolved system of governance is actually very ripe for use of DERs. It can really push that, that households should be given net meters so that they can be able to also generate electricity and they can be a powerhouse. This is something that is happening in Germany. If those of you who have visited Germany in Bavaria states, you'll find that every household has either a wind turbine, have solar on their roof, and they also have some biogas plants. And as such, the problem that happened in Texas, those of you who have been following the US power, cannot happen in Germany because the household has been empowered and have a variety of power electrical sources. So how do we do that? Because at the end of the day, you need money. And we are managing a number of projects in assisting to monitor some projects in Kenya. And one of the things that a number of donors are using is what they call blended finance. So I just want to talk a little bit about blended finance. But before that, donors and impact investors have recognized the potential of distributed energy resources, especially for the base of the pyramid. We have in Kenya flexible repayment terms and remote disconnection of solar home systems like copper solar, which enable pay-as-you-go solutions. And these have expanded the accessibility and addressed some market for this, especially the rural areas. However, distributed energy companies, donors, and impact investors do not yet have an adequate ecosystem that allows for integrated planning and the strategic deployment of resources. We still have very disjointed projects And all these stakeholders they do not have a common goal. They have a common goal, but each have different short-term objectives. Although the common goal is to make sure everybody has clean energy, but each stakeholder has a short-term objective, priorities, and understanding that limit their synergistic potential to bring modern energy to all in Africa. So while short-term priorities and incentives may differ, agreements around the longer-term goal of facilitating energy access can provide the basis for a shift in approach. There's no single panacea to provide modern energy to all in Africa. Instead, an integrated approach that utilizes solar, mini grids, and on-grid access is required. So one of the problems we have is that there's limited data on the geographic and human terrain of specific area, caused by numerous challenges to realizing this integrated approach. So what is needed is a common infrastructure that can link all levels of stakeholders, ranging from global investors, multilateral donors, national governments, all the way down to local communities. And I've just given here an example that empowering devolved structures, such as what we have in Kenyan countries, in Kenya, the counties, is actually a step in the right direction. If I read recently that counties have now been allowed to actually borrow money from external sources, if they can also be allowed to be in charge of their energy resources, energy generation, transmission, and distribution, I think that this will be a way in which this DER can really work. So driving investment into like solar companies, mini grid operators cannot be accomplished by either a purely top-down or bottom-up approach. There's need to build the necessary supporting ecosystem within a short period of time. Stakeholders at all levels need a common language and incentive structure that drives a greater coordination. As you know, there's been a push that there should be universal energy access by 2030. But this will not be achieved organically. Some things will have to be done drastically and urgently. And one of them is actually pumping billions of dollars in DR's companies as one of the solutions so that they can provide households with access to energy. Such money needs to come from commercial capital because governments will not be able to really fund this. So how do we do that? And this is where we come to what is blended finance. This is one way in which that we can actually make sure that we are getting money from the climate finance so that we can invest in energy. So far, donors and impact investors have been critical pioneers providing equity and debt financing, but the current level of funding are not sufficient to meet the significant demand. Therefore, commercial capital is required in order to meet current and future needs. Unlocking commercial capital at scale requires blended finance approaches that use impact funding strategically to cut commercial sources. So here, let me just define from literature what blended finance is. It's the strategic use of concessional capital to catalyze commercial funds and has been a very successful approach that helps mitigate the risks faced by commercial capital providers. Or in simple language, blended finance is the strategic use of development finance and philanthropic funds to mobilize private capital flows to emerging and frontier markets. And we see this as really emerging and frontier markets because renewable energy is one of those areas that we need to pump money so that it can energize everyone. So one way to achieve this is for financial intermediaries to use a layered capital structure that can draw from both commercial and concessional sources in order to achieve this goal. One of the layers that could work in countries with governance challenges, governance challenges here, we're talking about corruption, we're talking about all manner of things, is results-based financing. This is a form of payment by results, which generally refers to the delivery of national or subnational outcomes and outputs. So RBF could be used by developing country governments, national or local, state agencies or donor agencies to incentivize the provision of goods or services, create or expand markets, or stimulate innovation. This is already happening in Kenya at a smaller scale. So possible target outputs might include the number of new electricity connections that are provided in a defined area or advanced cook stoves that are sold. So this is a case whereby you're told, you're given, let's say, an area in Gong or in Kajiado and told, you electrify this area. Once you've electrified, we shall pay you this amount of money. And therefore, you use, for instance, now that MCS will be getting World Development Fund, they could use that money to electrify an area or provide improved cookstoves. And then after that, they're paid money by an investor or from the Green Climate Finance. So result-based financing is distinct from result-based aid, which applies at all levels above and is concerned with outcomes such as number of households using electricity rather than output such as electricity connections. So below here is just some of the example results-based financing instruments which could be used, which I think some of them I've already talked about. There's like the advanced market commitment whereby a fixed quantity or price is offered by an investor or donor, for instance, electrification of a particular region using renewables, and then you're paid. Conditional cash transfer, which is an instrument that can be used primarily to transfer cash to poor households to encourage certain social behaviors such as adoption and use of an improved cookstove. Then we have induced prices. This has been going on, and we've been involved in some of them whereby you allow people to show that they can electrify a certain area using renewable energy, and they can actually reach as many people in remote areas who are poor, and after that they are given a prize, which is always more than the amount of money that they have used. We have also output-based aid, which is an innovative approach to increasing access to basic services such as electricity in poor community. And in this case, service delivery is contracted out to a third party, which receives a subsidy to complement the portion of user fees that poor households are not able to afford. The outputs are verified independently after the service has been delivered and before payments are made. Then we have like performance-based transfer, which are used by governments to drive the delivery of results by state or local governments or by public utilities through transfer that place conditions on the results to be achieved while providing full flexibility in the design of programs and associated spending levels to achieve those objectives. Then we have simple ones like vouchers, which are an alternative way of providing capital revenue incentives to a particular product. You could give vouchers to a community or to a household and tell them go to a certain place and get this particular renewable energy product. So these are just some of the those are just some of the thoughts that are important that we need to be thinking about if we are going to electrify or energize the base of the pyramid. And we want to make sure that the money goes really to those people we're trying to assist. Then we need to come up with new ways of thinking, which will cut through the corruption, the bad governance that we have in Africa. So in conclusion, Climate finance, which is inherent in the Paris Agreement, can potentially be harnessed to provide modern energy services to the base of the pyramid. However, there are a few challenges that governments and companies need to overcome. Since the base of the pyramid is made up of the lowest income earners of an economy, the use of DERs, and blended finance stands a better chance of providing energy services at an affordable fee. Climate finance has opened up a window for innovative marketing and creating awareness to this large number of people despite infrastructure challenges, limited resources, and lack of awareness of products and services on offer. So policy measures that encourage blended finance, including result-based financing, are some of the innovative financial instruments that will attract investment into such markets. And subnational governments such as Kenya's counties stand a good chance to drive the above measures. So I'd like to stop there and just say that we have an opportunity here, and the opportunity here is to design some very good proposals. There's money in the Paris Agreement, especially from the Green Climate Fund, and this money will only be available to those organizations that come up with some very good and innovative projects and who are focusing at the base of the pyramid. So thank you very much. And just before I stop, I don't know, this is one of just an illustration for those of you who have visited, who have been to, sorry, for those of you who have been to Germany, you'll find that in German and especially in Bavaria state, there's always a local distribution grid, which has one or two or all of these systems where we have smart homes, we have customers with generation and controllable equipment, we have storage, we have solar, we have wind. You know, these are some of the things we are thinking that we do not need to have this at national level. This should be devolved so that at every county, in every county, there are this a local distribution grid, and it's connected to homes which can still generate electricity and can still pump it into the local grid and make sure that electricity is actually circulating to everyone and that we have a more stable grid. So thank you. I hope I was clear. I'll stop there.
Yes, absolutely. You are not clear. You are more than clear. The great clarity of thought, Bwana Mutimba, a lot of reflection and challenge. I think the last slide has really challenged us, this one and the one before, because right there are direct actions we can take. And we always keep saying that a gathering or a meeting or a webinar or a seminar or a workshop is only as good as the actions that come out of that. And so we are challenging ourselves on this call that we will take those last blue slides and ask ourselves, what can be done at the county level, at the national level, at the regional level, at the organizational level? What can actually be done? And so therefore that is of essence for us. I was just looking at the 14-man/woman team that Joe Biden has put together to advise on climate change and energy matters. And would you believe it that out of 14 people, all this, the Secretary for Energy, the Climate Change Advisor, the Environmental Protection Advisor, all these people, that 8 out of 14 of them are women? Does that say something? Does that speak to us in a certain way? That what is the percentage, all you mathematical people on this call? Can someone quickly do the maths as Ruth puts up the poll? We have a poll. Steve, you can stop sharing for a moment there so that we can put up a poll. Ruth, kindly put up a poll as you tell us what's the mathematics in terms of percentage, 8 out of 14. What's that percentage? Anybody with the maths? And in the meantime, there's a poll on the screen. 60%?
Something like that.
60?
57.
Okay. How much?
57.
57%. So most definitely over 50%, over half. So it's not even a third rule. You know, here we talk about a third rule. There's 57.15. We are heading somewhere. We need to have that in our countries as well. So there's a poll on the screen. We just want to see who's in the room and how much our day-to-day affects climate change action. Please respond to the poll, and then we can take that up and see who we are talking to before we take questions for Bwana Mutimba. Quite a number of us are also asking for more information. Please join our WhatsApp broadcast. It's a broadcast, it's not a group. We promise there'll be no strange forwards and you know, all these crazy things that people do on WhatsApp. We promise we are not one of them. It's a broadcast just to share with you information and presentations and videos and surveys and all kinds of information on the areas we are passionate about. So please click on that link and send a text and then save the number, and you will get the presentations that we have been making and all in the information about environment, energy, climate change, natural resource management, and all the subjects that we all want to get together to make a difference in the world. Another 1 minute for us to poll. Anybody else before we close the poll and share the results? And then take questions for Mr. Mutimba. Okay, I think we could close the poll now. We have 73% who have polled, and then show the results, share the results, Ruth. Okay, so this is who is in the room with us today. We have 36% our day-to-day affects climate change action significantly, then moderately, somewhat, and lightly. None of us is unaffected by our day-to-day is remotely distanced from climate change action. So we have the right people in the room. I think this is of essence. I think we share the second poll, Ruth, and then we take questions for Mr. Mutimba. Please put up the second poll. Let's just take a look at what our thoughts are. All right, we kindly request that you respond to this as well. What two factors, in your opinion, could be the main impediment to the region's climate change action? We say region because we have, you know, lots of Africans on the call from West and East as well. I know quite a number of the examples that Mr. Mutimba has used are local, but they can be extrapolated across Africa because we are one people. Really, we are, especially Sub-Saharan, we are just one people. Same way of thinking, same factors on the ground. Okay, so which two factors are you feeling would be an impediment? Because once we identify what the barrier is, what is in the way, then only can we take some significant action, as per his last two slides, to do something about it. Okay, another 1 minute. Another 1 minute. We have 65% response. When we get to 70, we should be able to be good to go. 30 seconds, please, Paul, please respond. Another 30 seconds, and then we can close the poll. Okay, going once, going twice. Oh, okay, people are still polling. Let me not say going. And should we close at that, Ruth, and share the results? Okay, kindly share results. So look at this. Look at what our thoughts are around the room. We are thinking that lack of government leadership is a significant factor that would impede our climate change action plans. And then lack of financing, lack of technical expertise, lack of private sector participation, and lack of policy. And then my question out to us out here is, who is government? Who is the government? Are we the government? Who is the government? Is the government somebody out there? Financing, we have been told just this morning about Green Climate Fund and how we need to plug into that. What kind of proposals do we need to put in place so that we can leap over that hurdle that is lack of financing? Technical expertise with the likes of Bwana Mutimba in the room. This is something that can be crossed very quickly from a capacity building perspective. Private sector needs to hold hands with public sector to walk to the promised land of climate change mitigation and climate change adaptation. And lack of policy is also something that private sector can join hands with public sector and ensure that we take the lead. Thank you for your participation and your answers. I think we can take a question or two for Stephen Mutimba. Mutimba, are you there? Your camera is off. I don't know whether you're in the room or not.
Yes, yes,
If
I'm
you
here.
are, oh, here
Yeah,
you are. Sawa,
yeah.
sawa. You have seen how much your services are needed from that hall in terms of
Okay.
intervention and what people need to put in place. So please put your questions on the chat, and or you could unmute and ask a question, and then we can have that responded to. As we wait for the questions, I have one question. You talked about three things. One, R&D, that we need to focus on research and development in the sector. The second was to have ambition, to have just passion and ambition for this subject. And the last one was funds. So I was wondering, Mr. Mutimba, out of these three that you projected, what do you feel is our key? How do we prioritize? What is it that we should, because we can't do all things at a time, which of these three should we prioritize?
Can I? Well, that's something for discussion.
Okay.
Yeah, because I think ambition is important. You need to be ambitious and say, this is what I want to achieve. Ambition is like having that vision. Like, yeah, this is what I want to do. This is what I want to prioritize. And then,
Right.
yeah, then you need to have a strategy on getting, on implementing your vision. So R&D and funds come in handy, because you'll need, um, before you even get the funds, you need to know how you're going to achieve that ambition. And I think R&D is one way of achieving that. Yeah, so
Okay.
having a plan in place and then looking for that funds. Because it's only those who have, what we've seen in the climate space is that the countries that have got climate policies, climate acts, strategies, and they are very clear on what they want to do, they actually get more money than those ones who just prioritize funds. Yeah,
Right.
yeah. So
So
to
the
me,
more concise the plan, the more
yeah,
attractive it will be to the funding partners.
agency. Yeah.
Okay. As Africans, we are accused that we don't plan well. I don't know whether that is a myth. But it is said that because we have great weather the whole time and we don't face devastating winters, that we are not of the mentality to plan well, because we just run out and grab fruits and meat from the environment. And so why plan? There's no need to hibernate to keep food for a rainy day, a wintry day. How has that been your experience with climate change action planning in the continent?
Yeah, I think more of, maybe there's planning, but we tend to involve people from outside who write documents for us. And then because we don't like reading, we don't actually implement what is in our plans. I think that's one of the challenges that we have, that we get people from out to assist us to plan. So they plan it in some huge and nice documents, but really we don't have time to read those documents. So we go out there and do what we think we are doing without following the plan. And this has been one of the, if you look at the Kenyan policies and laws and strategies, we have some of the best, but are they being implemented? And
Right. So we
this
need
is
to move
probably
from paper to practice.
paper to practice, and maybe we need a tradition whereby we also participate in the development of those plans, not just outsource them to consultants, and mostly external
Right.
consultants, international consultants, and then we don't know what they say. Yeah.
All right, great. We have a question from Richard in the chat. He says, in regards to power generation sector in the country, what implications do you think it would have if counties are given charge of their own generation and or distribution, especially the counties that seem to be infrastructure poor?
Mhm.
What's your take on that?
I think that is a very good question, and it's one that we need to start thinking about, because having a national power generator and transmitter and distributor in Nairobi and expecting the same to be working very efficiently in far off places like Turkana, 1,000 kilometers away, in Marsabit, in other parts of the world, is really expecting a lot. So the fact that we have devolved structure, we need to start thinking and doing things slowly and little by little. We are not saying that Kenya Power should relinquish everything to Turkana County or to Ajia County, but they can start working with the Ajia County to actually come up with a local grid, one that um, can incentivize people in that county to start uh, installing solar systems on their roofs, on their buildings, and to start, even distributing that power or taking it back to the grid. In Germany, there is a law in Bavaria state is that if a company or a household produces or generates renewable energy, the state must buy it, or the local government must buy. So you see what that has done to Germany. Germany is one of those countries that want to have 100% renewable. This is by 2050. And that law has made sure that every household is really working hard to produce some renewable energy. So this is what we are saying here, that let's empower counties to start being in charge of their energy system. It could be generation, but the transmission could be done by the state. But local distribution can also be done by the counties themselves. But it's something that should be done slowly by slowly, not necessarily just because there's also capacity issues which needs to be built.
Yes, we need to phase it in a way that's sustainable.
It needs to be phased. Yeah.
Right. Before we take the question from Peter, we have a very close and a very passionate relationship with members from the Pearl of Africa, Kampala, Uganda, with regards to energy matters, climate change matters, and the conference this year is headed into that location. I can see from the many works you've done, you've been involved in planning, resource mobilization, and financing for the government. What would you say would be an area of focus for Uganda, even as we talk about Africa as a whole?
Uganda is lucky to have a lot of water resources. There was a time we used to import a lot of electricity from Uganda. So they've got a lot of water resources. So hydro is one of their biggest source of electricity. And they also have a lot of forestry resources. And I think they've been developing a lot of biomass energy, trying to convert traditional into improved and modern biomass for cooking, which is partly dictated by the type of food that is eaten in the country, just like Kenya. Like matoke in Uganda requires to be cooked well, and you can't cook it on electricity or anything. So the use of biomass, improved biomass, becomes very, very important. And I think they're making good stride. It's one of the countries with very well organized a Ministry of Energy as well as utilities. So the issue here is just how they implement, like the NDC, which I think they were one of the first countries to come up with a very good NDC, which has focused a lot on biomass energy resources, improving biomass energy resources, ensuring improved cooking stoves, and ensuring that every household can be able to cook in a clean manner and also use clean energy. So, I think Uganda are on the right path.
Yes.
I don't know about the devolved structure, but I think the devolved structure started before Kenya. I don't know how far it has gone, but they're headed there.
Super. We are in great collaborations. It is always said in partnerships, great things happen. And so we're in collaboration. Peter, you had a question. We can take that one and then one on the chat and we wrap it up.
Yes, thank you so much. One of the ways of mitigating climate change is widespread use of solar panels. But here in Kenya, through IPRA, there are stringent laws. It has passed that before you import, before you buy, before you install any solar panel, you must have a license. The license is very expensive. Won't this not be a hindrance to research and development? Yes, that's the question.
All right, thank you, Peter.
Yeah, I think you need to look at it in two ways. The first one is why did we have to put a condition for license? I think the reasoning was that we had a lot of solar practitioners who really didn't know what they were doing. They were not well qualified or well trained. Therefore, the only way to sieve out and get people who are well trained is to require that they have a license. And to have a license, you have to prove that you're really trained and you know what you're doing. So I think that's why it was put in place. But I agree with you that in the last, 7 years, the renewable energy industry in Kenya has been hit hard by a lot of taxation policy issues that have really not been conducive for solar and mostly renewable energy. Because I remember in the previous government, all the renewable energy, especially solar, the duty were waived. They were not paying taxes, VAT. But now I think it's been introduced. Sometimes it's introduced. Sometimes it's year by year the finance ministry has been finding a way of taxing renewable energy, and this license is just one way of doing it. If the Kenya Renewable Energy Association can come up with a better way of vetting people who are working in that industry, maybe they can push for removal of that license. But the issue here is just making sure that people, especially in rural areas, are not given poor services by people who are not trained in the industry.
Right, yeah. The balance between quality and being able to then have the interventions that are put in place not be a barrier in the first place, and still just have quality controls in place. I think that's very critical and very important. I want to talk to you about young people, because they are the future of energy in this continent. And so on your screen, as colorful as it is, you see we have a youth in energy empowerment program that has been, powered and energized by quite a number of partners. And so it has been running from this year. We told you 2021 is the year of re-energizing things. And we have a gang, we're calling them a gang.
Okay.
We have a gang of young people who are so gung-ho about energy, and they are on this call today and trying to learn from everybody else who's a professional in this field. How do we do it? And how do we do it right? And so they are on a 10-month program that starts with a lot of learning. They have 4 months of learning. They will do certification programs and then be attached to industry. And so in the attachment, they will cause behavioral change, because what Mutimba you have told us today is that if we don't take charge of this, and if we don't cause, if we're not ambitious, if we don't have the passion, then we will not cause change. So the young people will cause behavioral change and have people now focus on climate change action and having good energy practice. So it is my pleasure to introduce the young people under the YIP program who are here today. And maybe we can have one person say hi to people on this call. I don't know whom I should call. They are all so lovely. You will fall in love with them, all of them. So let me take a look and see who is in the house and can say hi to us. Oh, you're in class. They're in class.
Oh,
If you look, if you look, I don't know if we can spotlight.
Oh,
Oh, there they
okay,
are.
okay,
Oh,
okay.
yeah.
That's good.
Hi.
Okay. They're all
Yeah.
masters.
Oh,
Hello.
yes, we are very compliant with the protocols. And so I don't know, Stefan, please say hi to people and tell us something. If you're able to unmask and say hi, are you?
Hi, everyone.
Hi.
Hello.
Hey, can you hear me?
Yes, we
Yes.
can.
So we are here representing the Youth in Energy Empowerment Program, and we are pleased to hear from you, Mr. Stephens. Thank you for your kind words and your words of insight.
Okay.
We are looking
All
forward
right.
to
There
discussing
we
everything
go.
we learned from you.
Okay.
Fantastic.
Thank you.
Fantastic. All right.
Yeah.
So
Just
thank you
a
very
quick one.
much.
A quick
Yes.
one, Caroline. So this group
Yes.
is based where, and who's are they part of your project? Sorry.
Yes, of course. They are part of a great project we are running. They are currently based in Nairobi. We are trying to see how to expand this program because I can assure you that we had applications from all over. The applications were from Uganda, from West Africa, from all the counties. We had to drop off some participants who were unable to make it to Nairobi. They are in Kisumu, in Kwale, in other counties. And there was a big group from Uganda as well who wanted to join. So we are trying to figure out how to run an online one or migrate the programs to other counties and other countries because it is very high impact. And on top of just technical capacity building in the energy and climate change space environment, we are also building leaders because if we are going to cause behavioral change, then you must inspire, you must motivate, you must lead. And so we have a leadership program built into it. We are so excited about changing the next generation, and we shall knock on all your doors, all of you on this call in whichever counties and countries you are in, to join us in this particular mission. So we wanted to share that exciting news with you today. Even as we wrap up, we have come to close to the end. We have another half an hour, but I think we won't go until 12. We will share the presentation with yourselves on the call so that you can ask further questions. We shall send you actions because we need to action these things. We can't just be talking. We are accused of, as Africans, of just talking too much and not moving from talking to action. You have challenged us, Mutimba, today that we shouldn't just be consumers of what is being put out. We too should be sustainable manufacturers and put out as well. That requires action. And so therefore, please join us as we move along and as we action. I think Elvis is on this call as well. We have the vice president of the chapter of the Association of Energy Engineers in Uganda, and we are going to Uganda. I don't know, Elvis, if you can wave to the people and promise us matoke, the matoke that Mutimba has talked about, and that we need to have, active bioenergy coming out of these products. Elvis, are you in the house? Is Elvis there? Somebody locate Elvis. And as we locate Elvis, I will request Ruth to put in the chat. We are doing a survey for energy professionals in terms of capacity building and training so that we make data-driven decisions. A lot of the training programs come from out. And as Mutimba was saying today, we should just consume foreign things without localizing. And so we want to know what energy professionals want to learn about, where we are at. So please fill in the survey so that we can have the results of that report and it can inform training programs, capacity building programs, knowledge transfer at public and private level. So the link will be in the chat. Please fill out the survey. Emily has put it there. And we take it from there. I think Elvis is in hiding. We shall welcome you to Kampala on his behalf. Yes, so that will be at the end of this, the last quarter of the year. So please join us as we celebrate World Energy Day in Kampala. And that's the last slide, actually, that one. We are going to Kampala, Uganda. It's from 20th to 22nd of October, but we are not waiting for October. Every single month, we shall do something in celebration of energy, climate change, food sustainability, water, all of these. So please be part of this movement for change. That is the theme. Our next webinar will be around unlocking this theme and how we can localize and implement SDGs. SDG 13 is the one on climate change. And then there's the one on zero hunger, SDG 2. And then we have the one on water, and then we have the one on energy separately. And yet when you look at all these sustainable development goals, you cannot achieve them in isolation of each other. Because how do you talk about climate change without talking about energy? How do you talk about food security and zero hunger if we are not talking about water and relieving water stress? And so therefore, all the theme has been created with that in mind, and to have synergies and harmonies around conversations that need to come together and joint efforts that need to be put in place. I can see Elvis has rejoined the room. Should I call him back, or we shall spare him the hello, hello? Elvis, are you there? We called you and I think you had fallen off the call. Please say hello to people and welcome them to Kampala. Elvis?
Hello, Carol, can you hear me?
I can hear you loud and clear.
Okay, sorry I had dropped off, but I'm here.
Yes.
It is good morning here in Kampala, and I'm sure it's also good morning in Nairobi. I'm glad to be here. I want to take this opportunity to thank Stephen for the very good presentation, and all members that are here for the discussions that have happened. We are so much excited to host the World Energy Day of 2021 here in Kampala, and we look forward to all the events and the climax of it, which is the World Energy Day conference here in Kampala. I also want to take this opportunity to thank Carol and the World Energy Day Secretariat for the very good preparations that we are doing, and actually congratulate you for the World Energy Day 2020, which was outstanding. And for Kampala, we are all waiting for the entire world to basically share a lot regarding energy. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much, Elvis. I knew it was worth waiting for your voice and your words of welcome and your very, great affirmation and warm words that will continue to inspire us to do what we are doing. The World Energy Day and all related matters are brought to you by Innovators, which is an energy service company, and we are very passionate about all things energy. Please go to our website and see what we are doing. We are ready to partner. Our arms are open. We are not here just to grab and to hold. We are here to share and to ensure that we leave this world a better place, because that is what we are called to do. So before I tell you the last thing that I want to tell you, which is very exciting, I would really request if we could put on our videos so that we could take a photo. You know, this is the first energy professionals round table. We must be part of this success. Please just for briefly, even if you're in your pajamas, it is okay. We don't judge people here at Innovators. Please put on your videos so that we can just take a photo, a quick screenshot. And then after we have taken a screenshot, we can then go back to videos off. Oh, I can see the videos coming on. This is fantastic. Ruth, shall you, there, page 1 is looking good. Please take a photo of page 1 and let us know. Shall we all say energy, 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 energy? Ruth, are you ready? Our smiles are getting more energized. Can we go to page 2?
Yes, let's go to page 2.
Okay, let's go to page 2. Page 2, please put on your videos. Oh, I can see people I know here. How awesome is this? Hi, 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 hi. Oh, it's lovely. Let's take a photo of page 2. Page 2, 1, 2, 3, say energy, energy. Right. Thank you very much. Those who want to put back their videos off, you are okay to do that. Let's call this to, Elvis, your hand is up. Did you want to say something?
Yes, Carol.
Yes.
I realized when I was talking, my video was off.
Yes.
Yeah, sorry, it's now turned on. And probably I missed the part where you did the introduction, but I'd also like to introduce myself as Elvis Secretary. I'm the Vice President of the AEE Uganda chapter, which is the Energy Efficiency Association of Uganda. I'm also the Director of Energenia Services Limited. We are waiting for you here in Kampala. Thank you.
Yes, it's lovely to see your smile. Elvis is always like that, always happy, always passionate, always ready to welcome us. I think Ugandans are very warm people. And so they have, I think it's the amount of food. You know, when your belly is full of peanut sauce and matoke, I mean, you just have to smile. There's just
We are
no
happy
other
all the
way.
time.
And so you're just happy, and we need to borrow a leaf from those in the Pearl of Africa. So, good people, we've come to the end of this wonderful morning. We thank you so much for coming and for being here. We thank you for taking time to talk about this very important subject. And as we have been challenged today, we must move to action. We cannot just be in concepts. We need to deliver and deliver comprehensively and sustainably. And so as we send you the presentation and all the activities going on, we'll send you an action plan that you can use to as a checklist to guide and to see where am I at with this. Financing is always an issue. We are here to partner, to put together concept notes, to form joint ventures, to form a consortium so that we can grab these funds and make a change for this continent. Time is up. It's time up for people talking about Africa in the way they talk about it. And the people to make this change is us. We've talked about the SDGs, there are 17, and the number 17 is implementation. That is where we are anchoring ourselves. All the SDGs are based on energy. There is none that can run without. Really, truly, there is none. Industrialization, I mean, really, economic empowerment, what can you do without energy? And so the call we are called for is bigger than just ourselves and our institutions. So let's take up this challenge. Let's move this one person at a time, one activity at a time, one organization at a time, one webinar at a time. And so let's do that. So thank you very much, everybody. We wish you a blessed day ahead that is full of energy and energized. We shall see you at the next webinar, which is possibly in April. In March, we shall have a Facebook conversation. And then in April, we shall have a webinar again to unpack the theme. So please join the WhatsApp broadcast. Please be on our portal, send us your email so that you don't miss out on any little bit of this. And so we will call it a great morning. Thank you all. You are free to exit from the call and enjoy the rest of your day ahead. Bye-bye.